Dozens of emails now released, which we are looking at right now for you. Welcome, everyone, to the Intelligence Report. I am Trish Regan. The concern here is, did Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, email sensitive, classified information on her private server? We have team coverage for you of Clinton's email with Republican strategist Rich Gallen and radio talk show host Leslie Marshall and our own Peter Barnes, who has been combing through these emails within the last 30 minutes. Peter, what have you found?
Well, hi, Trish. I just want to let you know that this batch of emails, about 1,300 of them, cover principally Hillary Clinton's first year as Secretary of State in 2009. They do not cover anything on Benghazi. Some of those emails were previously released, and they cover mainly routine, looks like office issues so far. For example, there's one that is headline, "Congrats on U.S." Subject line, "Congrats on U.S. AID." Another one from a staffer, "In staff office if you need me." Another on a holiday lunch for coming up in December of 2009. I did see at least one of these emails, as I've been looking through them, that had redacted information in them that clearly was sensitive or secret or classified in some way and required some blacking out. So we have found at least one of those, but again, we have 1,300 emails that we're going through one by one, and as we get news, we'll get back to you.
Well, we do know that the inspectors general, Rich, thought this was a big enough deal that they needed to refer this to the FBI. So as we comb through these emails here at this moment, what is it that reporters need to be looking for?
Well, I think reporters need to be but there's a couple of points here, Trish. One is it was unclear from all of the corrections and annotations that the New York Times did on that referral what the inspectors general were asking to be referred and under what circumstances, whether it was a criminal referral, a security referral, whatever that was. So that's still up in the air. The second thing is that reporters are looking for anything that would indicate a lack of continuity, where something there's an email from 2 o'clock in the afternoon about a subject, and then we know other things went on, and there's another email about that same subject at 6:30 that night, and obviously there's something missing in the morning. So what it may well be is not what's in the emails, but what's missing from the emails that disturbs a pattern.
You know, as we try and thread all this together, because let's not forget, she's the one who decided effectively which emails she was going to turn over. I mean, that's really part of the whole problem here, Rich.
And also, it's not likely that the State Department released anything that it considers to be classified or sensitive, or much less secret or top secret. So we don't know what was not released because they didn't release it.
Let me go over to Leslie for a moment. Let me share with you, Leslie, what the Clinton team is saying. They said in a statement actually on Twitter that, quote, "As has been reported on multiple occasions, any released emails deemed classified by the administration have been done so after the fact and not at the time they were transmitted." So they're basically saying, if you find anything in there, folks, anything that looks as though it was classified, it wasn't classified when she actually sent it, Leslie?
Well, technically, they are accurate in the sense it wasn't marked as classified. And even I think it's 5 emails now that they say out of thousands that have some sensitive or secret classification nature, they were not marked as such. So it does come down to semantics, but that semantics could be key. We also have to keep in mind that, quite frankly, if you look historically, it's pretty common to have an investigation and a referral to the Inspector General, and it usually doesn't go anywhere. So I think a lot of people hear, oh, investigation into emails, and at first New York Times falsely reporting into Hillary Clinton and not the State Department and the handling of those emails. And I think people go right to number 10, and we're a long way from that.
Yes, but Peter, ultimately, isn't it because the president's going to decide whether or not this really has an investigation or not? Peter. Forgive me, Rich.
Are you asking me that? No, that belongs to, no, that doesn't belong to the president. That belongs to our Attorney General, that decision.
Well, but it's a political decision, so it would certainly not be done in a vacuum. But let me just partially correct something. This was not, the activity last week was not a referral to the Inspector Generals. It was a referral from the Inspectors General to the Justice Department, we assume. So it's already at step 2 or 3. It's not at step 1.
Let me just share with you guys, I mean, from the previous batch that we saw, she was going back and forth with her confidant, Sid Blumenthal, and one of her State Department colleagues, and some of the things that came out of that were certainly questionable, and I would just say have no business being emailed on a personal server, included things like the location of French jets approaching Libya, the location of no-fly zones over Libya, and the location of Ambassador Stevens in Libya. I mean, Rich, this is sensitive information.
Well, if it came from Sydney, though, Sydney was a private citizen, and he didn't have any more access to that than any reporter would have had. Now, whether you choose to put that into an email or not, that's a decision that a reporter and his or her news organization would make.
Right, but she's the Secretary of State, so if she's going back and forth and engaging in that conversation, isn't that in and of itself a real problem?
You know, it's hard for me to get that far. Sydney is a private individual. They've known each other forever, obviously. And if she chose to use his information, I mean, that happens a lot. I mean, when, you know, whether it's Newt Gingrich or Mitt Romney or Barack Obama, they have friends who are not in the government, and they have a perfect right to engage them with their ideas and their thoughts. And whatever.
Let me ask you this. I mean, just the fact that she's out there emailing sensitive, potentially very sensitive information, doing business as a government official on your personal account. I mean,
that's a different
issue. Itself,
that
bizarre,
is an
Leslie.
Issue.
Absolutely bizarre.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to disagree that it's hurting her right now, although I don't put much stock in the polls and we are a lifetime away. Secondly, I do think in a sense it was reckless, and certainly in hindsight, and at the time it wasn't the best move. However, you know, they do, even though she is Secretary of State, and even though people will say that she was sending all of this classified information, where is this secret and classified information? Is it marked as such? Who was it sent to? We also have all of the information, obviously, that can be obtained on the State Department server. And to the earlier point about Sydney, her buddy, I would agree with Rich on that, he, you know, he's a private citizen, and she, as we know from the emails, didn't put any stock in what the information that he was giving her.
Let me ask you about something else then. This Swiss banking deal, I mean, allegations now, fresh allegations of sort of this murky land between her doing favors for a Swiss bank, and then all of a sudden, the Swiss bank giving her organization, the Clinton Foundation, $600,000 and $1.5 million in speaking fees to her husband. Now, this is being viewed, Rich, as a quid pro quo. She does a favor for them, reduce the number of accounts that they have to provide information on for potential tax evaders, and they in turn give her money for the foundation and for her husband's speeches?
Yeah, well,
do you think we'll see anything in these emails about that?
I don't know what we'll see in these. Whether it was, if these aren't the emails we'd like to see about that, we'd like to see the UBS emails about that. About, boy, she did this, we better do that. We have not seen that, and my guess is we never will.
You think we never will? Would she have been smart enough to make sure that those emails weren't actually included in the tens of thousands she did
No,
submit?
It's not her emails that would be at issue. It would be looking at the emails internal to the bank to see if their discussion said that we were assured. I'm making this up, that we were assured by the Secretary's office.
See, we would need an investigation for that, right, Rich?
Yeah, separate thing. But let me talk about this just for a second, and I think Leslie might agree. The details of all this stuff, we pay attention to it because we live with it, we're immersed in it and everything. But for most people, somebody in Kansas or Illinois or wherever, it's not the details of all these things. It's not the quid, whether there was a pro to the quid in a Swiss bank deal. It's the fact that on the networks and in the newspapers, regular voters, especially independents and moderate Republicans who are not committed to anybody yet, that it just keeps piling up and piling up and piling it up. And I think that, Leslie, is what's being reflected in not the head-to-head polls, but in the polls about trustworthiness and that sort of stuff. I think that is, in fact, taking a toll on Mrs. Clinton.
Leslie, we are getting reports that the Democrats are starting to get nervous, understandably so. When you look at the headway that Bernie Sanders is making against Hillary Clinton, they're starting to wonder whether or not they need another person in the ring. There's talk of Joe Biden. Do you think it's going to happen?
No, I don't know what Democrats you're talking to, because I and my other Democrats, we're very confident that Hillary will be standing on that platform. Even people who love Senator Sanders, who I know personally and like and have a great deal of respect for. And it's not a fear. I mean, he's certainly a Democrat. He represents a more left side of the Democrats. And if you look at the poll numbers, I mean, even though Trump is going to town, I mean, she has trumped Trump in the polls. I mean, quite frankly, right now, the one that it looks like she has the most to worry about is Jeb Bush. But we're a long way away. And I do agree with Rich on this, which is it's not necessarily the American people. I honestly, I don't even think they care what's in the emails. The people that already think of her as guilty aren't going to vote for her. The people that aren't going to listen to whether or not she's guilty are going to vote for her. It's those people in between, and they're not going to be. They're going to be swayed by emails or checks written to her husband for speaking engagements. She does.
She needs women.
She does, but it's not going to be based on these emails.
You don't think the emails are going to make it? Well, I wonder if she hasn't. Now, here's what I'd say. Camille Paglia, the well-noted feminist, had a piece on this recently, and she said, you know what? A lot of young women, they don't respect Hillary, and they don't respect Hillary for one reason. She stayed by her man despite the despicable stuff that he did, and there's something just not okay about all that, Leslie. And I don't know how, as a woman, you sit there and say, yeah, I like her, at knowing that she was willing to put up with everything that she has put up with.
But Trish, can I speak to that? Because as a woman, I honestly think that's women being sexist. And I say that because, look, if my husband cheated on me, I'd kick him to the curb. Love you, honey. But at the end of the day, if I'm running for office, my personal life with my husband, and I believe this about candidates, male or female, left or right, their spouses, their children, their personal life, unless there's illegal behavior and conduct, that should not weigh in. Some people consider it favorable that she stuck it out till death do you part.
I think your personal life actually says something about who you are, Rich. And I think that, you know, in the back of a lot of young women's heads is the fact that this woman was willing to put up with this guy, and they say to themselves, why?
Well, I'm not a woman, much less a young woman. But let me just talk about why I think there may be some lack of enthusiasm amongst younger women that we see amongst women of more seasoning, shall we say. And I think part of that is that when Mrs. Clinton was first lady, forget about being first lady of Arkansas, they weren't alive yet. But when she was first lady of the country, and I thought she was a pretty good first lady, or even in her early days in the Senate, the millennials were pretty young. They were in high school, maybe just getting out of high school. As far as they're concerned, and who knows who the Secretary of State is, again, unless you're us. But I think that for most young people, women being among them, Mrs. Clinton is just a woman running for office. She's not the woman running for office. Yeah. And
you
so
know what,
I'm not sure the mystery attaches to Mrs. Clinton.
I would add to that. I think you've hit on something in that a lot of young women say, you know, okay, yeah, what's the big deal? In other words, women today know that they can be anything that they want to be, and that is a message that is reinforced over and over. I certainly reinforce it with my little ones, and I think that as such, you don't have the same sense of, oh, I got to break through, I got to break through, I got to break through that you see in previous generations, such as Secretary Clinton's. We have got some more breaking news we are going to bring you right now on these emails. Peter Barnes joining us. He's been combing through all the information. Peter, what do you see?
Trish, we do have an example here now of classifying one of these emails after the fact as a classified secret document, and it was done by the Justice Department according to this email that we have in our hands. Just yesterday, an example of classified material in this latest batch of 1,300 emails that went through Hillary Clinton's private server was on her private email, and it covers some information about the United Arab Emirates, and it just is the topic. It's from her assistant to her, not from Ms. Clinton to her assistant, but from the assistant to her, dated September 10th, 2009. It's a note on from Rick Olson, who had been the ambassador of the United Arab Emirates for a bilateral meeting today. It just says, Madam Secretary, Ambassador Holbrooke asked me that I convey to you the gist of the conversation that he and I had with, and then the rest of the emails redacted out. So clearly the State Department has decided that that material, that gist of the conversation, should have been secret classified as secret at the time it was sent. It went through her personal server.
It went through her personal server. And this goes back to what I was saying initially, Leslie. You called it reckless. I completely agree. Why would our Secretary of State be using a personal email account, even if she does not send classified information? People can send her classified information, and as Peter is just reporting, we have learned, everyone, that one of those emails contained classified information that her assistant was sending to her. What do you think, Rich, might happen out of this? I mean, do we need, people have talked about this potentially being a criminal investigation. Is it going to get to that stage?
Well, it's a long way between here and there. But I think the security referral is much more likely. That is that the Justice Department may well decide that for not for political purposes, but for the purposes of national security, that they need to get their hands on that server and have a forensic team go through the server. But the part about what Peter was just talking about that I don't understand is why would I don't understand. Oh, maybe I say it was from her
assistant. You know what? We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to be back with more of this, but we have learned, everyone, breaking news. These emails are out, and it looks like one contains classified information. We're going to have more details on this story when we're back after this. Breaking news, everyone. 64 problems here to talk about in the Hillary Clinton emails. We have learned that national security secrets had to be protected 64 times. This is, of course, the State Department's release of more than 2,200 pages of emails. There are these redactions, censored passages 64 times. So kind of a big deal. The idea that Hillary Clinton was having all this classified information being exchanged on her own personal server as Secretary of State. Joining me right now, Fox Business's Peter Barnes, Republican strategist Rich Gallen, and radio talk show host Leslie Marshall. Let me go to Peter there if he can hear me. Peter Barnes, 64 times the government had to censor passages from her emails because this was sensitive information.
And I'm trying to look and confirm that personally, Trish. I can tell you that I've counted at least 41 emails in these 1,300 that have been marked classified. I am looking at one from September of, another one from September of 2009, in which the issue of embassy security comes up, and that entire part is redacted, and it says at the top, sensitive but unclassified. So it appears now, in hindsight, that should not have been described as sensitive but unclassified, and in fact it appears that the State Department has retroactively classified that information. And again, it is from her assistant to her through her personal server.
Look, I think the bottom line here, Leslie Marshall, is she's got a real problem. She's got a real problem because she's going to come out and she's going to say, you know what, I didn't know this was classified. I mean, you go back to this statement that I read everyone earlier that her team released on Twitter on July 24, saying that as it has been reported on multiple occasions, any released emails deemed classified by the administration have been done so after the fact and not at the time they were transmitted. So here she is trying to say, oh, well, I didn't know at the time it was classified. Leslie Marshall, you know, most people, they don't even email company business from a personal account. Here she was as Secretary of State emailing back and forth from a personal server. We know, given all the hacking that's happened as of late, how vulnerable certain servers can be. Yet she was, as you described it, absolutely reckless to do this.
But reckless is not necessarily criminal. One, two, these are now being labeled as classified, and they were not at that time. And what is in writing at that time, and they don't come from her when they went to her, is definitely relevant.
Because you know what? That's what she's going to say. And I'm saying, you know what? You're Secretary of State. You're Secretary of State. Let's face it, your calendar is confidential and may be considered to some classified. I mean, basically everything you're doing there as Secretary of State needs to stay in a secure environment. I mean, this is basic stuff that anyone should know, Leslie.
But if something is not classified or deemed secret and classified, she's supposed to assume that it is and be clairvoyant to know that someday in the future
but it
they would
wouldn't-
Poor little
retroactively.
innocent Hillary has no idea what's classified and what's not. She's Secretary of State. Why can't she email government information from her home server, Rich?
If it would not, Leslie, have mattered, this discussion would be moot if she had used the government's, the State Department's server and had a separate BlackBerry or whatever she was using for her private email.
Correct.
None of this would matter.
Right.
But not only that, but there are a lot of cables that go back and forth between embassies and main state or embassy to embassy. They're not necessarily secret. They're certainly not top secret, but they are sensitive. And you would just assume that Vladimir Putin didn't have it as his tea time reading. So whether or not it's absolutely, classically secret or not is really beyond the point. But even more beyond the point is that the argument about whether it's criminal or not means nothing. It's a matter of whether or not Mrs. Clinton and her people showed bad judgment in deciding to protect her emails.
You know what, Rich? You talk about bad judgment, and I think that bottom line is what underscores all of this throughout. I mean, just bad judgment. And, we were talking earlier about the bad judgment she had staying with the man who repeatedly cheated on her. That's one. But then bad judgment, but bad judgment in that she was engaging in conversations with a Swiss bank that then somehow was donating to her foundation, that then was paying her husband for speeches. I mean, that's just bad judgment. And then, of course, emailing stuff on your personal server. Again, a case of bad judgment. And Leslie Marshall, a lot of Americans, they want to know that their president has good judgment, very good judgment. And I really question how much this is going to hurt her now.
I don't think it will. And like I said, because it comes down to the middle. It comes down to the independents. It comes down to the centrists. This is not going to be an issue that would make or break her. And when we talk about, for example, the Swiss bank, it is very common for Secretary of States to cut deals as she did when they said, look, we're in a quandary. We don't want to be pulled in and to be charged by the United States, but we have our own laws in Switzerland. So can we cut a deal and can we hand over some of the private American bank account information that you're seeking? And that's what she did.
I can't believe you're actually trying to defend that.
Very common for Secretary of States to cut deals with other nations and banks.
I honestly, Leslie, cannot believe that you would try and defend that, because here you got a woman who is the champion for the 99% that just really dislikes the 1%, and yet the 1% is the one that's contributing to her campaign, and the 1% are the ones that may have had their tax accountants or their accounts in jeopardy because of the favorable tax environment they were getting from Switzerland. And let's not forget, I mean, UBS was supposed to have to release 50,000, upwards of 50,000 accounts.
Correct.
And she managed to get them down to about 4,000. That was the deal between the IRS and the Swiss bank, negotiated by none other than Hillary Clinton. You say that's normal for Secretary of States to do that, but, most Secretary of States don't have a spouse that's then being paid $1.5 million by that very same bank. And I would just say it once again comes down to judgment. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Guys, we got to take a quick break, but we're going to be back as we continue looking through all of these emails just released from the State Department. I'll see you right here in 2.